Hello everyone, welcome. From red carpets to courtroom drama, Darcey Silva and Georgi Rusev's relationship was never ordinary. What started as a whirlwind romance on 90 Day Fiancé slowly turned into betrayal, heartbreak, and scandal. But what really happened behind the scenes? This is the story of secret affairs, financial deception, and emotional collapse. This isn't just reality TV. It's reality. For the past 10 months, Darcey Silva had been secretly involved in a romantic relationship with a banker named Thomas. What began as a private connection slowly grew into a serious romance. After Thomas learned about Darcey's hidden financial troubles, he promised to take full responsibility for paying off her secret debt of $570,000. After that promise, their bond became even stronger. They spent time together at luxury hotels and private events, showing how deep their relationship had become. A few weeks later, Darcey discovered she was pregnant. Medical tests confirmed that the baby she was carrying shared Thomas's DNA. When Georgi Rusev found out, he was devastated. The news caused intense emotional pain. Arguments followed. Accusations were thrown back and forth. The tension became unbearable, and eventually Darcey decided to divorce Georgi. She made her decision clear. She said she only wanted to marry Thomas. Unable to handle the betrayal, Georgi attempted suicide. Later, he accused Darcey of embezzling $450,000 from his savings and giving it to Thomas. The case went to court. After a long hearing, the court ruled that Georgi's claims were true. As a result, Darcey was sentenced to 5 months in prison. Georgi has now decided to move on and plans to marry again. But to understand how everything reached this point, we need to go back to the beginning. Darcey Silva had always attracted attention. With her platinum blonde hair, designer outfits, and emotional openness, she became a standout personality on reality television. Viewers watched her search for love on 90 Day Fiancé and later on her spin-off show Darcey and Stacey. Time after time, she experienced heartbreak, but she never stopped believing in love. Then she met Georgi Rusev. He was tall, handsome, and quiet. A Bulgarian massage therapist living in the United States. Georgi seemed calm and grounded compared to her past partners. Their chemistry was immediate. Darcey saw him as a chance for stability and lasting love. Georgi was drawn to her passion and ambition. Their relationship moved quickly. Within months, they were engaged. Some fans supported them and believed Georgi was good for her. Others questioned his intentions. But Darcey was fully committed. She proudly shared their romance on social media and called him her forever love. However, behind the glamorous photos, problems were already growing. Georgi was naturally quiet and avoided confrontation. Darcey, on the other hand, needed constant reassurance and emotional connection. She wanted openness and transparency. Georgi preferred privacy and calm. This difference created tension. Darcey began noticing small things that made her uneasy. Georgi would sometimes disappear without explanation. His phone was often turned face down. When she asked about his finances, he became defensive. Rumors spread that he was hiding money or even communicating with his ex-wife. Darcey's insecurities, already sensitive from past relationships, became stronger. Their arguments became more frequent and more visible to the public. On television, viewers saw Darcey confront Georgi about his lack of emotional openness. She cried and asked for honesty. Georgi often responded with silence, which only made things worse. Privately, Darcey told close friends she felt alone. She said Georgi seemed distant and unwilling to plan a shared future. She wanted marriage, children, and commitment. Georgi wanted space and independence. Their goals no longer matched. Money made everything more complicated. Darcey had invested heavily in her fashion brand, House of 11, and was dealing with serious financial pressure. Georgi was unclear about his income. When Darcey asked for help managing her debt, Georgi refused. She later said that moment changed how she saw him. It was during this emotional low point that she met Thomas. Thomas was not part of the reality TV world. He was a banker with a calm personality and steady presence. They met at a charity gala in New York. Darcey attended alone after another argument with Georgi. Thomas did not treat her like a celebrity. He did not ask about television drama. He simply asked if she was okay. That simple question stayed with her. Thomas listened to her. He asked about her dreams, her struggles, and her fears. He did not judge her. He offered understanding instead of criticism. Over the next few weeks, they exchanged messages and met for quiet dinners where no one recognized her. Darcey began to feel safe and understood. Their connection deepened quickly. Thomas spoke about stability and building a future. These were words Darcey longed to hear. She opened up to him about her financial stress and the emotional exhaustion she felt in her relationship with Georgi. One evening, during dinner at a rooftop lounge, Darcey revealed the full truth. She was carrying $570,000 in hidden debt. She expected shock or disappointment. Instead, Thomas calmly told her he would take care of it. She was stunned. No one had ever offered that kind of support before. Georgi had refused to help her financially. In that moment, Thomas represented security. The affair began quietly but soon became serious. Darcey spent more time with Thomas and less time trying to fix things with Georgi. She stopped attending couples therapy. She stopped responding to Georgi's efforts to reconnect. Emotionally, she had already moved on. When Georgi discovered the affair and the pregnancy, everything collapsed. The betrayal cut deeply. For Georgi, it was not just about another man. It was about trust, pride, and humiliation. His emotional breakdown shocked those around him. After surviving his suicide attempt, he became determined to fight back legally. He accused Darcey of transferring $450,000 from his personal savings without permission. According to his claim, that money had been given to Thomas. The legal battle that followed exposed private details of their lives. The court examined financial records and transactions. After reviewing the evidence, the judge ruled that the money had indeed been taken unlawfully. Darcey was sentenced to 5 months in prison. The sentence marked a dramatic fall for someone who had once dominated reality television screens. Fame and glamour were replaced by legal consequences. Today, Georgi says he is ready to move forward and plans to remarry. Darcey, after serving her sentence, faces the challenge of rebuilding her life once again. Their story is more than just celebrity drama. It is about emotional vulnerability, financial pressure, trust, and the consequences of hidden choices. It shows how quickly relationships can collapse when communication breaks down and secrets take control. What began as a fairy tale romance ended in betrayal, courtrooms, and heartbreak. And in the end, both Darcey and Georgi were left changed forever. After the court ruling and the prison sentence, the public reaction was intense. Headlines spread quickly. Fans who once followed every romantic post were now reading about legal documents and courtroom decisions. For many, it was hard to believe how far things had fallen. Darcey entered prison quietly, away from cameras and flashing lights. For the first time in years, there were no producers, no interviews, no social media updates. The silence was overwhelming. Inside those walls, she was no longer a television personality. She was simply another inmate serving time. The experience forced her to slow down. Without glam squads or luxury hotels, she had only her thoughts. She replayed the choices that led her there. The secret meetings, the financial transfers, the emotional decisions made in moments of weakness. For the first time, she had to confront everything without distraction. Meanwhile, Thomas remained mostly out of the spotlight. Reports suggested he kept a low profile, focusing on protecting his career. While he had promised to take care of Darcey's debt, the scandals surrounding the court case created pressure in his professional world. Banking and controversy do not mix easily. Though he initially stood by her, the strain of public scrutiny began to show. Georgi, on the other hand, slowly rebuilt his image. After his suicide attempt, he focused on therapy and recovery. Close friends said the betrayal had shaken him deeply, but it also forced him to grow stronger. He began speaking openly about mental health and emotional trauma, something he had rarely done before. For Georgi, the pain was real. He had loved Darcey. Despite their arguments and differences, finding out about the affair and the pregnancy felt like losing everything at once. But the legal victory gave him a sense of closure. The court's decision confirmed that his accusations were not just emotional reactions. They were based on facts. As months passed, Georgi started dating again. This time, he chose to stay more private. He avoided public displays of affection and kept his relationships away from social media. He had learned how quickly public love can turn into public disaster. Back in prison, Darcey began writing. She kept a journal where she documented her feelings, regrets, and hopes for the future. She wrote about love, about trust, and about how fame can sometimes blur judgment. She admitted to herself that she had been searching for validation her entire life. When Thomas offered financial security and emotional attention at the same time, she felt rescued. But she now understood that rescue built on secrecy cannot last. Her pregnancy added another layer of emotion. Medical supervision continued throughout her sentence. She often wondered what kind of example she would set for her child. The thought both frightened and motivated her. She promised herself that once she was released, she would focus on stability, not drama. Thomas visited occasionally, but the visits were quieter and shorter than before. Reality had replaced romance. The luxury dinners and rooftop promises were now memories overshadowed by legal consequences. The relationship that once felt like an escape now felt complicated and uncertain. When Darcey was finally released after 5 months, the world outside felt different. Cameras were waiting, but the tone had changed. Reporters no longer asked about engagement rings or wedding plans. They asked about accountability and lessons learned. Darcey spoke carefully. She admitted her mistakes without going into details. She said she had made decisions during emotional vulnerability and accepted the consequences. She expressed gratitude for a second chance and said her focus was now on her child and rebuilding her life. Public opinion was divided. Some believed she had paid the price and deserved a fresh start. Others felt the betrayal and financial crime could not be ignored so easily. Social media debates continued, but Darcey chose to step back from constant posting. Georgi announced his engagement quietly months later. He said he had found someone who valued privacy and honesty. In interviews, he avoided speaking badly about Darcey. Instead, he described the experience as a painful chapter that taught him resilience. Thomas's role became less visible over time. While he initially appeared ready to build a life with Darcey, the scandal affected both his personal and professional reputation. Sources suggested their relationship faced serious strain after her release. Love built during crisis often changes once the crisis ends. Darcey focused on repairing her brand. House of 11 struggled during the legal battle, but loyal customers slowly returned. She shifted her public image toward empowerment and accountability. She spoke about financial literacy, emotional healing, and the importance of independent stability. Looking back, the entire situation felt like a dramatic rise and fall. What started as a glamorous reality TV romance ended with betrayal, a courtroom, and prison time. But beneath the headlines were real emotions, real mistakes, and real consequences. Darcey had always chased fairy tales. She wanted the perfect partner, the perfect life, the perfect love story. But reality proved that perfection does not exist. Love requires honesty. Money requires responsibility. And secrets, no matter how carefully hidden, eventually surface. Georgi learned that silence in a relationship can create distance. Darcey learned that seeking comfort outside a broken relationship without ending it first can destroy everything. Thomas learned that stepping into someone else's unresolved life comes with risks. In the end, there were no true winners, only people who had to face the results of their actions. Years from now, this story may be remembered as one of reality TV's most dramatic scandals. But for those involved, it was more than entertainment. It was heartbreak, humiliation, growth, and painful maturity. Darcey's journey continues, but now with a different perspective. She no longer speaks about fairy tales. She speaks about responsibility. Georgi moves forward with quiet determination, focused on peace rather than publicity. And the lesson remains clear. Fame can magnify love, but it can also magnify mistakes. When emotions mix with money and secrecy, the outcome can be explosive. What began with red carpets and romantic captions ended with legal documents and prison bars. Yet life goes on. People heal. People change. And sometimes the most dramatic endings become the foundation for a wiser beginning. After the headlines faded and the camera slowly disappeared, real life continued in a quieter way. Darcey tried to rebuild not just her public image, but her inner stability. For years, she had lived in a world where attention felt like oxygen. Every relationship had unfolded in front of millions. Every tear, every argument, every romantic gesture had been captured and replayed. Now, she was learning to exist without constant validation. Motherhood changed her perspective. Holding her child forced her to think long-term. Decisions were no longer about romance or image. They were about responsibility. Late at night, during quiet feedings and silent moments, she reflected on the past. She admitted to herself that she had confused being chosen with being loved. When Thomas offered financial rescue and emotional support at the same time, she felt secure. But she had overlooked the cost of secrecy. Thomas, too, had changed. The pressure from his professional life had grown heavy during the scandal. Banking institutions value trust and discretion. Being linked to court cases and media controversy created complications he had not anticipated. While he cared for Darcey, the reality of public scrutiny strained their bond. Their conversations became more practical than romantic. They discussed parenting schedules, finances, and damage control rather than rooftop promises and future dreams. Slowly, the intensity that once defined their affair softened into something more cautious. For Georgi, life moved at a different pace. Therapy helped him process not only the betrayal, but also his own emotional patterns. He recognized that his silence during arguments had not protected the relationship. It had weakened it. He began working on communication, learning to express feelings rather than hide behind calm detachment. When he introduced his new partner to close friends, he did so quietly. No dramatic announcements. No flashy engagement videos. He had learned that private happiness feels more stable than public performance. He still carried scars, but they no longer defined him. The legal case remained part of Darcey's public record. Even after serving her sentence, rebuilding trust took time. Business partners asked more questions. Financial institutions required stricter documentation. Every contract felt heavier than before. She had to prove reliability again. Instead of hiding from the experience, she eventually addressed it openly in interviews. She spoke about emotional decision-making and how vulnerability can cloud judgment. She admitted she had allowed fear of losing love to push her into reckless actions. Her honesty surprised some critics. It did not erase her mistakes, but it showed growth. There were difficult days. Online comments could still be harsh. Some viewers never forgave her. Others felt sympathy. Living under public opinion required thick skin. But Darcey began focusing less on strangers' voices and more on her own accountability. Thomas remained involved in his child's life, but the romantic spark between him and Darcey became uncertain. Shared crisis had brought them together. But once the crisis ended, they faced the reality of compatibility. Their bond had been built during secrecy and rebellion. Now they needed foundation and trust. Some reports suggested they tried to make it work for the sake of their child. Others hinted that distance was growing. Whatever the exact truth, it was clear that life after scandal required maturity neither of them had fully developed before. Darcey's relationship with her family also evolved. Those closest to her had watched the drama unfold with concern. Conversations that were once emotional became more direct. They encouraged her to prioritize stability over passion. She listened more carefully than she had in the past. Financial recovery was slow but steady. She worked closely with advisors to avoid repeating mistakes. Transparency replaced secrecy. Contracts were reviewed thoroughly. Transfers were documented clearly. The chaos that once surrounded her finances gradually settled into structure. Georgi's engagement eventually turned into marriage. It was a smaller ceremony than the glamorous events once planned with Darcey. Close friends described it as calm and sincere. He looked different, not physically, but emotionally. More grounded, more confident. In rare interviews, he reflected on the past without anger. He admitted the relationship with Darcey had taught him painful but valuable lessons. He said heartbreak can either break you or build you. He chose to let it build him. As for Darcey, she stopped chasing fairy tale language. Words like forever and soulmate were replaced with growth and stability. The shift was noticeable. Fans who followed her journey for years saw a woman who had experienced consequences and survived them. Her story became less about romance and more about transformation. She began participating in discussions about emotional health and financial awareness. She spoke about recognizing red flags in oneself, not just in partners. That perspective marked a major change. Thomas continued balancing fatherhood and career. Though the scandal had impacted him, time softened the intensity. Professional life stabilized. Personal life remained more private. He no longer attended public events with Darcey the way he once had. In the end, the dramatic arc of red carpets, betrayal, courtrooms, and prison bars became a completed chapter. But life did not freeze at the ending. It moved forward, quieter and more realistic. The biggest lesson for all three was the same. Choices made during emotional storms can have lasting consequences. Love